So first up, so the first interview that's going to start shortly is with Matt Sawyer, who is the co-founder of Kleene.ai, and he's got his VP of Revenue, Greg Freeman, that have recently been through this journey. Owen, before we invite them on board, what was the reason we ended up getting Greg and Matt? Why did you think they would be interesting for this topic?
I think it was about timing. So I've known Greg for a long time, or for a reasonable amount of time anyway. Matt, I met in lockdown when he spoke to me and was about to embark on the journey of building out a sales function after some funding. And he was ready to scale and was talking to us about some ideas to do that. He ended up bringing Greg into the team, somebody I already knew. Greg's built out a team during lockdown over this year and seems to be kicking some great goals. So they are right in the midst of the journey that we're talking about here now, with some really early stage successes. And I think it was something to highlight for them, because I think it's worth acknowledging how good a job they've done. But more importantly, it's current. It's people who are doing it right now, and who better to learn from than somebody that's in it at the moment.
Absolutely perfect. And it's challenging enough building and managing an SDR team without a global pandemic. So I think you're right, to get some real-time insights is going to be interesting to all of our guests to hear how they're living and breathing this. So I'm looking forward to that being our first part. And then the next stage, the next panel discussion, will get a bit more detail into the process of recruiting, onboarding, and also training SDRs. So for that, we've got Elaine Tyler, who runs a very successful SDR recruitment business out of the UK. Actually, congratulations to her. She just celebrated her 5-year anniversary as a business. So she's done this thousands of times in her career. So she's going to be helping you think about the right individual. Alongside her is Shabri, who is the founder of SalesWorks, and they're a leading sales training and development consultancy for SDRs, AEs, and CS. And she's got some fantastic frameworks. And actually, there's been a number of SDR management workshops that she's been running. So she does this every single day. So I guess between Owen and those two individuals, we thought we could share some insights for those that have to do it at volume, because they're basically living and breathing this every single day, and they're tasked by other companies to deliver. So that's going to be our second session. And then we're going to invite Richard Smith, who is the co-founder and head of sales at Refract, who are a call coaching software provider, and Julian Johns, who's a tenured 20-year sales veteran who has just done this time and time again. And also, most recently, he's actually dialing in from Norway. So we've got some international spirit today. So I think for now, there's enough from us, Owen. Let's now invite up Matt and Greg. So Matt and Greg, if you want to come on stage, just so everyone's aware of the process. Matt and Greg, I can see you, so I will shortly do the intro. What you can expect, everyone, is this. Owen is going to be leading this from a host and interview perspective, and I will disappear. You would expect each of these segments to run for 15 minutes. So short enough to keep your attention, but long enough to get a bit of depth. We expect that questions will come. So if you have questions during that, Owen will be able to navigate the stage and bring those into the discussion. So as Owen mentioned, Matt is the co-founder and chief data officer of Kleene.ai, a company he co-founded a few years ago. They provide a solution to helping solve the data challenge simply, quickly, and efficiently. And maybe, Matt, you can share a little bit more about that. And naturally, as an early stage SaaS founder, he wanted to identify an individual that has built out and constructed successful sales teams. So today we've got Greg Freeman, who's the VP of Revenue, and also previously he was the VP of Sales at OneUp, which was a sales performance platform. So guys, thank you very much for getting involved today. I will leave you to Owen to drive this session. Good luck.
Thanks, James.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, James.
Hey guys, how's things?
Yeah, really good, mate. Busy day,
Good.
but yeah, really good. We're
Good.
obviously excited about our own webinar later as well. So it's a whole PM of webinars. So
And give it a quick plug. What's your webinar?
we've got a webinar with Gymshark at 6 till 7 to hear about how they use data to take them on their scale journey.
Fantastic. Well, good that you got the plug out. Good luck sitting in front of the screen all afternoon, and hopefully you'll have a dry throat from all the talking later. We've got 15 minutes to get out as much value as possible, so I'm going to get straight into it. You guys have been on a journey this year from not having an in-house sales team to having a team of SDRs, and I've been really interested to observe that from the outside. Matt, if I start with you, if you don't mind, as a founder, you obviously had a trigger point to start that journey, and you had to think about what you needed to do to start that off. What was the starting point for you?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I mean, the history of Kleene is one of bootstrapped, sort of consultative-led selling, founder sales, your standard kind of bootstrap journey. I think probably resonates with quite a few people on the call. And we got to the point where we had real confidence in the product that we had built and the offering that we had for our prospects, but just no experience of go-to-market, of how to actually get it out there in front of that audience. Even the terminology, I've learned so many new acronyms that really confusingly overlap with a bunch of acronyms in the data space. So it's actually confusing. But really being very aware of our own limitations in that space, knowing what we know and knowing what we don't know. We initially thought that we should sort of hit the ground running and try to do that hire of a sales team directly in, and thankfully we didn't do that. I think it would have been a complete disaster had we had a sales team come in and sort of report directly into me with my complete lack of experience. I was introduced to Greg by someone I'm sure some people on the call will know well, a chap called Jerry Hill, an old mate of mine. So just that kind of cronyistic, who you know, not what you know. Jerry, mutual contact of mine and Greg's, did the introduction, and the conversation sort of went from there.
Brilliant, fantastic, and very smart move. I think I see so many founders think they can do it themselves, and it not only can it be hard, but it can also get in the way of everything else. And I think it's a smart move, particularly having found somebody as good and as experienced as Greg. So Greg, you came into a new business. I guess there was a certain process you needed to go through before you could even start thinking about bringing people on. Talk to me about some of those things you needed to have lined up before you hit the go button.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You've got to do the work, and I think very relevant to being handed over to from Matt there. The first thing you've got to do when you're taking that role, and it's my favorite thing to do is come into a business as the first sales hire. It's something I really enjoy. But it's to manage the expectations, and that's not only manage the expectations as you when you're hired as the individual, but then manage the expectations around what an SDR team is going to deliver, what an outbound process is going to deliver. They chuck a fair chunk of money at it, actually. By the time you've hired 3 or 4 people, to get your SDR function going, including the person leading it, that's a decent chunk of cash up front. So the world's on fire. They're like, yeah, we'll be closing 20 deals by next month, and it just doesn't work like that. We all know that. So I think the first thing I had to do was manage the expectations, and it's quite a big taking a business on its data journey. It's not a small decision for them either. So it was always going to take some managing of expectations. I think from the practical things that you need to be doing, there's tons of them, but I tried to narrow it down to a handful that might be useful for people. So I think firstly, you need to know what qualities you're looking to build out in your team, what qualities you're hiring for, personality traits, experiences, and then align your interview to those. There's no point wanting to hire for ambition and then asking someone in their interview how they make a cold call. Those two things are completely disjointed. You need to be asking them what their ambitions are and find clever ways to get that without asking it so directly. You definitely need to build a playbook. It's such a cliche again, but you need to build a playbook. You need to have that to guide you through the onboarding process. And my playbook does really guide my onboarding process. Actually, it's something they can refer back to at the end of the day, but actually it does massively guide the onboarding process. I think two things that are really linked are planning the time as a team to make sure you can do it effectively. So we took a 3-week window where we kind of took a pipeline hit, and we were like, look, we need to get hiring right, we need to get onboarding right. If I'm not doing deals in that time, if I'm not doing demos, that actually has to be fine, because long term it's going to pay off. And I think the big thing with that is that it's probably the most important point for me, which is show them that you care. Show the new hires that you care. Ultimately, you shouldn't just be throwing a wall and hoping some of them stick. You should be giving them the best opportunity to be successful. And that does take time. It does take energy. It does take coaching. So do plan a block of time to really focus on that hiring process, nurturing your hires. And then most importantly, once they're onboarded, focusing on their coaching and delivery.
And that's interesting, because it's about giving people the right tools, isn't it? You can bring really talented people in, give them the wrong tools, and they'll fail. So in real terms, what did that investment in terms of time and focus for you look like, Greg? So you came in on day one. How long was it before you were able to confidently say we're ready for SDRs now?
That's always the interesting bit, and I think it's different every time you do it. At OneUp, for instance, I would have said we were ready straight away. Like, I already knew coming into that business there was product market fit. It was ICP sorted, all that kind of stuff. There was still some iteration to be done. It's been more complex with Kleene. It's a bigger project, bigger product, more like messy messaging in the data space. So we did a big whole piece of market research, spoke to, I think it was like 60 to 100 different businesses out there about what they need to do with analysis, what they need to do with data, what their data journeys have looked like. And we had to get all that done before we were able to actually go, Matt, Drew, I'm confident to now hire SDRs. And even since we've hired SDRs, the iteration we've gone through on the messaging and the process has been far more significant than I thought it was going to be. But I think it's just a side effect of the situation you find yourself in when you first launch in the team. It's the best market research you can ever do, really. 60, 100 calls a day is the best market research you can ever do. So
that'll do it. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because you get people of different ilks that want to have everything right before they go, versus others who will jump head deep into something and work it out as they go. And is there a right or wrong in your view? Does it very much depend on the situation you're in?
I think you have to understand that there's a point where you've got to pull the trigger. Like, you've got to kind of get it. If you kind of get it, do it. Because that's the thing. Me sat there making X amount of calls a day is only speaking to 5-7 people a day. If you hire 3 people to then do that, it like massively multiplies the amount of conversations you have, in the amount of learning you're doing. However, I think it's really important. And again, coming back to that, I believe if you're hiring SDRs, you shouldn't be throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks. You've got to be setting them up for success. But part of setting them up for success is being transparent with them. Being the first couple of hires in a new business, in a new go-to-market, is bloody hard. Like, you're basically having to go way above your experience level to kind of digest what's happening and then feed that back to the senior team. So you do have to be transparent. Like, Aaron Wes, I think, might be on the call. Wes just gone to Portugal, so maybe not.
I've seen Aaron saying Team Kleene with the
like, I was complete. If learning new messaging and it not being easy isn't for you, go join Outreach, because they've got a great message and they smash it loads of times. Like, it's that kind of thing. You've got to be honest with them. Like, don't be disingenuous. Don't sell them a dream that they can't live up to, kind of thing. So I think that's really important for the founders and the first sales management hire.
Thanks. And Matt, as a founder, I see so many people, and actually had an online debate with somebody openly on LinkedIn the other week, which I thought was a really healthy one, around how many hires do you put in first? Because there's a temptation to put in one. And what typically happens is you've got one person who can sink or swim, and you've got no benchmark. They've got a lack of collaboration, a lack of competition, a lack of environment to set them up for success. On the other hand, hiring a VP of revenue and 3 SDRs is an expensive process. And again, there's never a right or wrong with this. But talk to me about why you guys together made the decision that it was right to go out with multiples rather than take a stepping stone approach where you start and build on top of that.
Yeah, so I think really this, again, it speaks to our sort of lack of experience in this space. We had to really take the advice of Yeah, I mean, I know obviously you and I had a chat back then, pre-Greg joining the speaking to really great sales minds like Jerry. Jerry introduced me to a number of people. I had a number of conversations about this, but then it did come down to having, exactly as Greg said, you've got to take the plunge at some point. The going with somebody in a senior position with that experience like Greg was a sort of educated decision by that point. But Greg and I spent a pretty intense, probably 10 days, 2 weeks of communication with one another, where I mean it ended up becoming a little bit silly. I was sitting on the sofa with the wife at 10:30 at night on a Saturday, like surreptitiously chatting away to Greg on WhatsApp, and she's like, "Who's that? Is that Greg again?" I'm like, no, it's another woman. Like anything other than that. So yeah, it was really, really intense to understand what good would look like and understand what the process should be, and that was a two-way thing. I think I'm sure Greg would echo this, but giving Greg the confidence that we knew what we were doing in our space, and we were going to be able to give him the headspace and the support and the financial backing and so on to do what he needed to do to be set for success. And then really building off that, exactly as Greg said, that market research, getting to a point where we were confident enough. You can never be 100%, right? Confident enough to pull the trigger and build that team in. And we were lucky with the sounds a bit disaster capitalist, but we're lucky with the situation that we found ourselves in, the amount of incredible talent in the London market for SDRs when we went to market. We only intended to hire 2. We ended up hiring three, and Aaron and Emma on the call, and Wes is sunning himself in Portugal somewhere. But they're incredible talent, and that's really testament to the process that Greg put in place. So yeah, it's a plunge that you've got to take, and you've got to trust it. Life is full of right?
Absolutely. And what about the focus on things like culture and environment? Because we can talk about process all day long, but you and I both know that environment, culture, climate, all of those things contribute to success in an SDR team or any sales team. So, Greg, from your perspective, how much does that come organically versus how much did you actually plan? I want the culture to look like this.
Yeah. So, like, I come from an American football background in my sporting life, and there's a phrase in American football. Culture over scheme every time, because American football has a terrible reputation for being too like technical and almost like chess, but for like humans hitting their bodies together. But actually the best programs are built on great culture and kind of camaraderie and support and performance culture. So it's somewhere that I focus a lot of my time. And we made a decision, even though like we were just hiring, so we made the appointments in the first week of June, and obviously everybody was actually available at that point. Wes had a 1 week notice, I think, but everyone was available, so we could have gone straight in then. But we had an inkling that the world and the economy was going to probably open up again in the first week of July, so we made a deliberate decision to delay the start date by a month. Made sure we really nurtured them through that journey, and that's really important. Treat it like, once you've made your appointment, treat it like a sales process. Keep them engaged, share information with them, make sure they're not going to get the next person to slip into their DMs and offer them a couple of grand more. It's going to take them away. And we decided to go off. We decided to come back to the office, and I think what it's done is it's allowed the guys all refer to each other. It's like, oh, we're all like stepbrothers and sisters. Like, they've built that really quickly by being in the same place and having that enjoyment. But I think, again, because the American football thing, it's like a coaching first culture in essence. Like, I massively believe in coaching. It's such a big part of American football. And we're building a very open forum in terms of just come grab me if you want coaching. Like, we have fixed coaching points in the week. That's again more difficult from a distance. But the bit I think that you were really getting by being being a culture together at the moment is, oh, Greg, I need you to look at this email for me. I've just had this conversation. Like, what should they have said instead? And I think that's the bit that that's the focus on culture that's important to me. The kind of coaching first, always open door culture.
Brilliant. Guys, I think we could talk for about an hour about this easily and probably keep pulling value out. I'm sure that you guys are happy to answer questions if people have got them. Last thing before we move on to the next people, loads of value in 15 minutes and we're rushing. Top tip or biggest challenge from each of you. So Matt, from your perspective as a founder, what was having looked back over the last few months, what's your either top tip or the biggest challenge to be aware of to another founder in the same scenario?
Oh, that's putting me on the spot. I think top tip is trust your gut on the hire.
Yeah.
I think you know, I'm a data person, so that's kind of crazy for me to say, but with people, you really do have to trust that instinct with hiring, and I actually did that with Greg. He then provided me a mountain of evidence of why he's good. Though I still haven't seen his CV, so. Yeah, really that.
He hasn't got one.
It's all lies. And biggest challenge really, I mean, for us, it's very much what Greg touched on. It's the complexity of the product and the complexity of the go-to-market messaging.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And Greg, you coming into a new organization and going quick, really hard and fast in the new organization, what was your biggest challenge?
Yeah, I'm going to take it from making that decision to join a company. Two things. Joining a company that has no proven outbound and commercial model is a massive risk. So do not be afraid to ask really deep and meaningful questions. Ask to see the client, the revenue number, ask to see the books, all that kind of stuff. It's genuinely worth it to make sure you're making the right decision, and then manage the expectations. It's exactly what I started with, but manage the expectations. An outbound model is only really going to deliver true value, in my opinion, probably 12 months later, when you've had chance to have like the feedback loop of inbound causes outbound, causes inbound, causes outbound, and builds partner model, etc. If you go in and promise the world and say you will be closing £1 million worth of revenue in the next 6 weeks, you're only setting yourself up for failure. And if your founders aren't willing to listen to it, they're not the right people to join.